Back at it, athlete builder. Guest this week, Connor Agnew. A few things about Connor. Number one, right off the bat, just got back from his honeymoon.
Yes, yes.
So that's cool, right? We're going to ask about that. He's a mountaineer right now. He's at Appalachian State. In his history, he's worked with a number of different sports teams. Currently, it's men's basketball and women's golf there. He's played a number of sports. He's bounced around, got degrees from everywhere. So exercise science from Temple. Then he moves on to University of Pennsylvania, and then he's keep working his way up. He's at Tennessee, then Texas Tech. So like most people that are doers and achievers, Connor keeps progressing along. In addition, he runs a podcast called Samson Strength Coach Collective. What else can I say about Connor? Cool dude, funny dude. We had a great time. He's telling me about the Gatorade Performance Partner, a whole bunch of things we're going to get into. Maybe his deep water book. He has a CSCS. But hey, Connor, man, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on. Thanks for having me on a little while back. I think it was episode 208, season 2. So that was fun. But tell us, man. Tell us about the bride. Tell us about the wedding. Tell us about, were there any like wedding crashers issues, wedding singer issues, the bachelor, or the hangover type issues, party. Tell us about the big day and then the big trip after.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the kind words. I'll make sure my now wife is listening to the podcast so she can hear that other people like me too, not just her. But it was awesome. I mean, seriously, it was the best day of my life. Seriously, it was one of those things where I'm a big pre-planner. I love to spend my time planning ahead of time. And so I think we knocked out a lot of issues beforehand and everything went off without a hitch. My mom officiated the wedding. Everybody always gets a kick out of that.
Wow.
Yep. And so she did a great job. It's hard not to be critical of your own mom too. And so I thought I was hypercritical and I thought she did amazing. And it was, I'd say the only like kind of hiccups we had is the typical strength and conditioning kind of spiel where, we had a couple coaches who wanted to come and then all of a sudden their teams made nationals or whatever and then they couldn't come last minute. And so no crashers. I was actually inviting people last minute to come. I was like, we have 2 free plates. If you want to come, please. We already paid for them. We just hired a new assistant coach on our team here. And I was like, please come, I met him 2 days before that. So ultimately, it was a ton of fun. Great open bar. Everybody got excited about that. Great food. We had a fantastic time. No hangover type moments, which I got to shout out the groomsmen. They did a fantastic job. I went to bed at like 12 a.m. the night before, and everybody thought I was lame. And I was like, all right, well, good. I'm glad that that's lame. And then after that, we went straight to the honeymoon, which was in Playa Mujeres outside of Cancun. And that was absolutely electric. I slept all day and drank and ate and had the best time of my life, and then had to come straight back, and I was very excited to do this podcast.
Didn't gain any weight on the honeymoon, right?
I gained at least 15 pounds, and then after it sort of settled out, I sat around 12, and then today was 11, and so hopefully we can cut down a little bit more. But I'm looking at my face on the camera right now. I'm puffy. I can feel it.
Getting back to neutral. So
That's the hope.
When you have athletes or coaches, whether they're on their field of play or on their court or even in the weight room, sometimes those folks can still be a little bit competitive. Does that happen at all at the wedding where you said it's open bar, free drinks?
Yeah, it was certainly competitive. We had a couple guys trying to outpace each other, but they held it together well. The nice part about strength coaches, they're usually larger, and
right.
So they were still standing at the end of the night, which I was very appreciative of. But it's funny, those like dance glow sticks that they have for the dance floor or whatever. Every wedding has them. There's a video of my wife doing a spin in her dress, and then there's a like 6'7" guy behind her spinning 2 of them. And I was like, who the hell is that? And I looked and it was Ty Watson. He's one of the strength coaches at Butler University. And so I texted him immediately. I was like, dude, what the hell are you doing? He was like, I had a few too many of the Finley, which was our cocktail. It was an Irish mule. So people had fun, but nobody got too crazy, which is great.
What was the usually if you have open bar, you have a groom's drink and a bride's drink. What was yours?
Mine was it was the Irish Mule, the Finley.
All right.
Yeah, so it was named after my dog, and my wife was pissed because everybody liked mine way more. like literally, she had it was like a mimosa basically, and so everybody started going to the Finley immediately. And we woke up the next day. She was like, "It was awesome." She's like, "Nobody drank the mimosa though," and I was like, "Obviously, because I picked the better one."
What are the ingredients to the Finley?
Finley was Jameson. It was lime juice and ginger beer.
Okay.
Yeah, it was next level. I mean, and they mixed it perfectly. I got one right after the wedding, and then I actually messed up the first dance at one part. We did a full choreographed dance. Like we practiced it for like a month going into it, and I messed it up in one part because I had about 3 Finleys before we walked out there and forgot what part we were at. So
I'm a car bomb kind of guy on St. Pat's, so Jameson and Bailey's, they split that in the shot and they dropped that into 2/3 of a pint of Guinness, and he slammed that
incredible.
down. Yeah, it's outstanding. The with your mom officiating, you being kind of like a control freak, were you in the bridezilla role then, and not so much your wife?
Yes, 1,000%. Seriously, like the week before, we were doing like eating as clean as possible, like no drinks or anything leading up to it. And then on Tuesday, I just got so stressed out about just all this stuff that we can't control. And then actually, okay, now you remind me of one perfect thing. And so on Friday, the 2 days before the wedding, we got married on a Sunday. That Friday, I was laying in bed. It was like 6 a.m. and I woke up, and again, I was in my bridezilla mode already, thinking about all the things that could go wrong and that we had to control. And then my fiance at the time turns to me, and she's like, "I haven't heard from our photographer since April, and this is late May." And I was like, "Excuse me?"
She's kidding.
Yeah, no, dead serious.
Oh
Dead
my
serious.
God.
Has not heard from the photographer since April. And I was like, come on. Like, I had a million questions, and I was like, all right, I got to be patient here. And I was like, okay, well, we'll call her phone number. Try to call her phone number, completely dead. We got 0 responses on any of the emails. And so we literally had our friends bring their cameras just in case. And then the wedding planner said, email her last second, say there's an emergency with the venue. And she emailed us back in 15 minutes. So, not a lot of respect for the bride and groom, but she knocked it out for the the facility, no problem.
I think she wanted to add that little extra flavor so you remember her. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That was a dead quiet 3-hour ride to Knoxville. Like, because I'm trying not to stress her out, and then all I'm thinking on the side is like, what are we gonna do?
I'm gonna kill this lady, right?
Exactly. I was not pleased.
If you're working with the basketball team, so Lucas and I we're based out of Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Pacers are in the finals. OKC, and OKC's strength coach is coming on here I think next month.
Well, that's awesome.
We keep having to push it back because he has these awesome problems where they keep winning.
I wish
right?
I had that problem too. That'd be incredible.
Kept winning, and then one of his guy got the MVP, so we had to reschedule that night. It was the same night. I was like, dang. So, but yeah. So, I got 3 questions. Have you been paying attention to NBA at all?
I've been locked in for the finals. And now NBA regular season, I'm not very good about it.
That's fine. What do the Pacers need to do to win?
I think rely on Tyrese Halliburton more than anything. I mean, it cracks me up, all the memes about him selling his soul to the devil, because, I mean, he seriously has been doing a fantastic job. So, obviously, last night's game was a little bit different, but I think that's your guy. You got to go to him.
Just ride that horse.
Yes, absolutely.
And OKC, what do they need to do to win?
I'd stop Tyrese Halliburton.
That's it?
Yeah, I think that's the answer.
Gotcha. So who's winning?
I would actually like to see the Pacers win. I think that we're going to see OKC ended up winning this. Yeah, I think they've got more depth. I think they've got the better overall team, and obviously having the MVP always lends to a little bit more success too.
And just like that, 9 minutes. This is now our shortest episode, and we are over. So that's Connor Agnew, everybody. Thanks so much. Email me, jim@athlete-proto.com.
I'd love to be wrong.
Right? All right. So you're in Vegas. You're picking OKC. Got it. All right. Let's switch gears a little bit. And the first question I had, back in Tennessee days, Volunteers, right? And I've only been to Knoxville once. My son plays for Ball State. So one of their Tennessee's tune-up games a couple years back, they were playing at Nyland Stadium. It's out, it's amazing. And since Ball State wasn't a threat, all the fans were super cool. Right? But if we were Alabama or Florida and they rolled into town, it's going to be a little different. But we're getting free rides. They're walking us, making sure we're getting back to our hotel. Some people giving us drinks. Right? Tell us about your Tennessee recruiting visit.
This is a great one. So, at the time, I was just working as an intern with football. I was not getting paid. So what I had to do on the weekends was ended up going out for Uber and Lyft. And so I drive until 3 a.m. just to make sure I could make rent or whatever. Now, the strength coach there was incredible. He would pay us $100 for every time we came in on the weekend for a recruiting visit. So that was a big help. But I think I was short on rent or something coming up on that next Monday, and I certainly had to pay it. And so I ended up staying out till 3 a.m. he calls us in early for the recruiting visit. So I got about 2 hours of sleep. And so how they set up the recruiting visit is the first rack is power cleans. Okay. And so that they've got 185 on the bar, right? Second rack is overhead press. It's 185 as well. Third rack is bench press, 275. And then the fourth rack is squat, 315, right? Which these numbers are, not unattainable for me. I've done it before, and you got to do 5 reps at each. It's not a big deal. And so the head strength coach will talk through. This is for the big groups, right? So there's 40, 50 people, including recruits, families, everybody, and all the recruiting girls that were there too, which I was trying to hit up every single one of them as well, right? And I'm like, well, this is my time to shine, right? So they picked me that day. And for some reason, they ended up loading on 225 for power cleans, right? And I'm like, all right, this is not a big deal. I can handle this, right? And so I ended up looking at all the other racks too. I think somebody played a joke on me. They loaded them all up with different weights for that day. And then so we ended up going in reverse order. And so we started off with squat. And I'm like, all right, squat is actually the one I'm the least concerned about, no problem. And so I hit all the squats, no problem. He's talking through the entire lift. I hit the bench press, no problem. He's saying why we do bench press. Overhead press, no problem. That's always my best lift. And then we get to power clean. And I get set to go pull. And I'm like, I'm absolutely gassed. Like I have 0 in the tank right now. I'm like, all right, well, I'll just man up. Like seriously, it's not a big deal. And so I go down to get it. I pull as hard as I can. And I get it just like right to my xiphoid process, right where I should be able to do. And I try to go duck under it, and I do one arm underneath and the other arm stays on top, and it jams my elbow straight back into my thigh. And so I give myself a Charlie horse and drop the bar, and it is dead silent in front of like 40 to 50 people. And the only thing you can actually hear is me breathing because I'm exhausted and we went the wrong order on this stuff, right? And so then I go to clean it again, do the exact same thing. Boom. And so then I drop it again. And then the head strength coach literally comes up to me, whispers in my ear, he goes, "You better get some gumption." So he steps back. I clean it up again. I'm supposed to do this for 5 reps, right? Drop it, and I clean it up again for 2. And the last one is literally like, high schoolers' first ever power clean, with 95. Like my chest, my nipples are on my quads. I'm like literally barely standing up with it, and I get it up. And then I drop the bar, and he's like, all right, that's a recruiting presentation for today. And then for the rest of my entire internship, all they would say is that I had 0 gumption. So the Tennessee fans were very nice, but I certainly was not their biggest fan for the day. That's for sure.
Dang. And the poor guy's just trying to make ends meet,
That's exactly it. Exactly it.
Because if you weren't dirt poor, you wouldn't be out working Lyft, driving people around, drunk people around your car all night long until 3 a.m.
This is exactly it. Yep. And he actually made that clear on another lift we had. We had Nordic curls, which was great, right? And I've always been a strong hamstring guy for some reason, right? And so I was able to do a Nordic curl. I would still have to push off just slightly, but it was technique. I'll give myself that perfect, right? And so we go all the way down. I push off. This is in front of the entire team now. So this is actually half the team. So 50 guys. I push back up, and then he goes, "Connor, do another one," right? And I go down and do another one. It's great. And he goes, "Okay, so," and he was pissed off at the team that day for some reason. I can't remember what it was. And he goes, "So this guy doesn't make 1 penny to be here. 1 penny. He never makes any money to be here. He can do a Nordic curl, no problem. And all you guys are on scholarship, and you get your cost of attendance checks and all this stuff." And he goes, "And this guy doesn't make any money." And he turns to me and he goes, "Connor, do you make 1 red cent to be here?" And I'm like, "No, coach." He's like, "No money." And I'm like, "No, coach." And he goes, "Absolutely nothing. You have no money." And I was like, "No, coach." And he goes, "So then I can't." He goes into a big rant about why they can't do this and everything. And then, of course, all the assistant coaches for the rest of the time as well would just scream at me, "Are you poor? Are you poor?" Just over and over again. So I certainly took my lumps when I was an intern.
Yes. Lucas, he could probably attest to some similar situations. He was at Purdue and Maryland. Interning football team, and again, no money, right? They're not paying at all. Living on a lot of protein bars from the facility.
Oh yeah.
I remember one time I was when I was at Purdue. This was kind of like my first I better not do that again. It was so I was at Purdue, and if you know who Jeff Eaton is, he's the associate director now at Virginia Tech, and I yawned. This is my first time working with college, and I went, and he's way on 32 racks down, way down there. He's like, "I better not see you yawn ever again, Lucas. You better get your shit together." He was lighting up, and I was like, "Oh, never yawn ever again.
Yeah.
You know?
You get blasted for the smallest stuff. It's insane.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, you do.
But I'm a better coach for it, I would say.
Likewise.
One of the things I always ask people that are coming on the show, what are some of their plans down the road? And your long-term plan says, I want to develop a strong family.
Yes.
Does your wife play sports, and how tall is she?
Okay, you have certainly made fun of me for this before, right? Because we've always talked about the genetics aspect would be huge.
Yes.
So my wife did play tennis, and I mean, I will say she's a pickleball animal. Can absolutely pick them apart. The only downfall out of everything for my wife is that she's about 5'5". So when I say strong, I mean I'm looking for a bowling ball son or daughter who will be the best wrestler or
Right.
Olympic lifter or power lifter of all time. That's what
Sure.
I'm looking for. Yeah, we're not set up for middle. Maybe potentially we could move to Texas and find the one school that still runs a fullback, and hopefully that could be their success.
Yeah, yeah. But maybe wrestling, man. Iowa State, Oklahoma State.
I wrestled in high school. It was certainly exhilarating time.
Unless you guys move out to Utah and go the Mormon route with multiple wives, this is probably what you're looking at. Right?
This is it. This is the way, and I've stuck with it, and I understood that. We actually talked about it at the altar. I said, I love you even though you're 5'5". So,
Despite, this is one of your 6 things, and I made peace with it. Got it. Okay. All right. I always ask people, mindset, knowledge, teammates, nutrition, training, and recovery, and you had some good topics and discussion things on the mindset piece. And I asked you for building the athlete's head. You said a mental check-in every morning. So let's talk about what a mental check-in every morning is. And after there, let's go straight into self-determination theory I'm ready to learn today. So
yeah, absolutely.
Mental check-in, what's that look like? Is it, a BAC? Breathalyzer? Was that what's going on?
Certainly after the honeymoon, I needed a BAC before I did anything in the morning. That's true.
All right.
So the mental check-in, that's a process I implement for myself. I tell my athletes about it, and I hope they do the same thing. But you can hope to disseminate information. You never know how much it actually gets applied, we'd say. But the mental check-in piece for myself, it actually started during my internship process, and so what I noticed was on the days when I woke up and all my thoughts were predominantly negative, that was going to be a bad day. And so it seems simple, right? But I noticed that, okay, if I got up and it's 4:00 in the morning, right, we got to get ready for 6 a.m. lifts, whatever it may be. And my first thought is, I can't believe I have to do this, right? And I can't believe I have to go there. And I can't believe I have to, set all this stuff up. And then I'm going to be there till 6 p.m. tonight and I have to do the exact same thing tomorrow. And just like this constant train of negative thoughts. And so what I noticed was on those days, it was by far the worst days that I had. And it could have been a very neutral day of what actually happened during the day. It could have been a great day of what actually happened. But my mindset was already at a point where I was negative and I would view everything else that happened as negative during the day. If it was something good, it was like, okay, well, it went well today, but it's going to suck tomorrow. And that negative mindset just stuck around. And then I noticed on the days that I was excited about stuff, right? It may have been, okay, today's a 6 a.m. lift and then we're done after the 6 a.m. lift and I get to go home and I don't even have to drive for Uber tonight, right? During my internship, whatever it may be. I noticed that those were the great days no matter what. And so it took me a long time to kind of develop this process and really start to do it. And I first really started doing it on a daily basis when I got to App State 3 years ago. But the process is just understand when you wake up, there's 15 minutes typically. My normal morning routine is I'll shower the night before. If I've got an early morning lift, I've got my clothes laid out. I literally wake up, brush my teeth, eat a quick breakfast, and within that time, I've got 15 minutes. And I try to say to myself, okay, within those 15 minutes, were the majority of my thoughts positive or were they negative? And so that time where I do that full check-in is when I get in the car because I like to wake up as late as possible, get in the car, sit down. So as soon as my butt's in my driver's seat, I immediately think, okay, were all my thoughts predominantly negative or were they predominantly positive for today? And so most of the time when you start doing that audit process, you start to notice you think more positively just because you do it. But what I also noticed is that I immediately had the opportunity to turn my days around because I did that audit. And so when I sat down and I saw that most of my thoughts were negative, I forced myself to think of a couple of things. The first one is just being grateful for my position. There are a million coaches who are unemployed right now and love to have the job that I have. And you know what? Part of the best part is that I work for a great staff, and we win a lot, and I like doing those things, right? And so understanding that I'm in a great position, and then a bigger piece too is recognizing that all of this really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Ultimately, I know you guys have had some amazing guests on the podcast previously who have done some amazing things. I might hopefully get to change some athletes' lives and get them excited about, fitness, or help them determine their mindset for the rest of their lives. Like, those things do matter, but at the end of the day, I'm just the guy who yells at the end of a bench at a basketball game. And if we lose a basketball game, nobody dies. There's no great loss to the universe, right? I may feel like my universe is ending at that point when we lose a non-conference game or whatever it is, but it really doesn't matter. A lot of people do a lot more important things on a daily basis. So just understanding that, you have to be grateful for the fact that you get to do something that's fun, and something that ultimately you get to enjoy, but is not a life or death matter. And so those are kind of the big pieces from the gratitude standpoint. The second piece is thinking of some positive things that I know for a fact that I can do today, or something that I'm excited about for that specific day. And so the third piece, and this last one's kind of crazy, but the exact same guy who reminded me how poor I was taught me this technique too, right? But it's literally put your hands together, and then you rub them together, and then you say to yourself, I feel great, today's going to be a great day. And then you say it louder the next time, I feel great, today's going to be a great day, until literally you're yelling it, I feel great, today's going to be a great day. And sometimes it literally tricks you into feeling like today's going to be a great day. Sometimes you just laugh at yourself because it's, 5:30 in the morning and you're yelling at yourself in the car, today's going to be a great day, whatever it is, right? And then I just noticed that when I checked myself in the morning and saw that I had a negative mindset and I was able to turn that around, my days just got better and better and better. And I just was so much more happy with where I was at in life. I was so much more happy for others as well, too. I stopped playing the comparison game where, one of my best friends just was hired as the director for Florida State University, and we're the same age, right, for the Olympic strength department. And I think 5 years ago, before I started this process, I would have been really jealous. And I would have kind of thought negatively about it and just like, well, maybe he doesn't deserve it, or maybe, and I have no problem saying this because he is one of my best friends, right? But now when he got it, I never once had a jealous thought in my mind. I just said, that's amazing, because that's an amazing person who got an amazing position, right? And good things happen to good people in my mind. So it's eliminated the jealousy factor, it's eliminated the comparison game, and it's eliminated the negative days. Now, it's not infallible, right? There might be some days where, I remember after we lost in the conference tournament this past year, I tried to do the same process, and I was like, I need another day, right? But ultimately, I've noticed that on a daily basis, it just raises the quality of my day on an average basis. It's just much better, and I feel like I'm a better person for it. I feel like I'm a better coach because I just understand that a lot of my day was within my control.
There's about 10 different things there that are outstanding. And I love that you have a process for this, and you had enough self-reflection. Hey, man, this isn't working so well. Maybe I should try a different approach. The guy that's sitting at the end of the bar every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes they never think, maybe I need a different approach. And, that's that rate of learning. You get hit in the face and you don't move your face. You get hit in the face, you don't move your face. Like, intelligence is the rate of learning, right? So when you change your approach from I have to gratitude, that's just simply changing the word I have to I get to.
Mm-hmm.
I get to go in, right? So, words have value, and when your brain hears it and your mind hears it and you feel it, it starts sinking in there. It kind of trickles in like a little leak, and starts developing that self-conscious, and so you have that gratitude. So usually if you're grateful for something, it's kind of hard to be mad.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to be mad, right? Hey, you know what? I'm happy I got this. I'm lucky to have this. So it is hard to be mad. And you think about the potential for that rest of that day. Like, I remember early on when I opened my gym, every quarter I had a huge interest payment I had to pay to these lenders that lent me the money to get the gym going. And so those few days leading up to it, man, as I'm trying to make sure I have all the money scrounged up together to make this payment, you're stressed out. And then I go through on that day and I write all the checks and I send them out, and I'm like, I have enough money to cover everything. And I'm like, okay. Once I had that stress gone, I literally felt like I was taller. I'll be walking to the gym. Like, so the stress has a real physical toll. So if you start off with some gratitude, like you said, you talk about the potential, and then you have this increasing crescendo of affirmations that I feel great, today's gonna be a great day. All right. I feel great, today's gonna be a great day, right? And you're right. Sometimes I'll be like, bullshit, this is bullshit, man. Fuck. All right, I'll say it, but I'm not all in today.
Hmm.
But you're still saying it, right? So maybe you're a little bit, instead of being 100% negative, maybe I'm only 75% negative now. So at least move the needle. And other days you might be 50% or 100% to the good. And at least you're making an effort, and you have a process where I'm going to repeat this and then see how I do. And what you're saying is, well, I came with this process. I had this third tweak with the affirmations. And you know what I found? I found this. So you have new data of a new process, and then you have your feedback loop, and you're like, you know what? My day's been going better. I feel better. So you're probably performing a little bit better.
Hmm.
Probably more fun to be around. Coaches and family and friends probably see it, even though she's 5'5". She's probably paying attention, that, hey, this my guy Connor's more fun to be around. So yeah, I think I will marry him now that he got his shit together. And at such a young age, what, you're 21, 22 years old?
28 now.
20, all right, 20. Man, good for you. Good for you. Do you get much traction with your athletes with the same process? Is it sinking in a little bit where guys will start doing it every once in a while, or some people come up and do it? Is one follow-up question, and then the second follow-up: are the females more compliant or the males more compliant when you're coaching?
um, I will say that I noticed the seniors buy into that stuff a lot more than the freshmen, right?
They're
And it's the
older.
exact same process, yep, that I went through. When I was an intern, I recognized that when I was negative, that, it was probably not a great day, but I still didn't really take that much action, or I didn't really concern myself too much with it. Versus when I got older, I realized, okay, do I really want to be this person on a daily basis? So I would say the older guys buy into it just a little bit more, but what I do is sometimes if the session sucks and it starts, I literally make them do this exact same thing I just said. I literally make them rub their hands together and say, I feel great. Today's going to be a great day. Right. And it's funny because you'll watch guys laugh, and even if they think it's like silly or stupid, right, all of a sudden they started laughing about something. It may have been a tough practice and they came in. One of my rules is that we can't talk about basketball in the weight room, right? Because the last thing I want is a practice where, it may have been a great team practice, but one player didn't perform well, and all of a sudden he comes in and says, hey Joe, you didn't set a good enough screen for me when we were doing our open runs, or whatever it may be, right? Ultimately, I don't allow that talk because I think it detracts from what we're trying to do. And so when we force them to basically focus on their mindset and say, okay, I feel great, today's gonna be a great day, or try to essentially set them up with times where they have to do those things, I've noticed it improves it. And so then what I try to do is follow it up later, and really make sure that people are aware that you have the opportunity to change your mindset. The one thing that I will do, and this is my second favorite quote, because I've got my favorite quote loaded up, ready to go later, but my second favorite one, is you run into one asshole during the day, you ran into an asshole. You run into 10 assholes during the day, you're the asshole, right? And so I love that quote because it's the exact same concept we just talked about, right? Like you are in control of a lot of your destiny. And so you're the asshole if everybody, if you think that everybody else is wrong and that you're the only one that's right, you really are the one that's wrong. And so I might have those conversations individually with some players as well too, who I notice are in a rut, or who I feel like are externalizing their emotions instead of internalizing them, and understanding that there's a process of getting better there too. Now for the male versus female, I would say, unequivocally, the females do a better job of, understanding that process. The males, I think, certainly wait for the frontal lobe development 25 plus, to really begin it.
My wife still accuses me of being lacking there, and I'm two times that 25 threshold. Is there a significance with rubbing of the hands while you're making that affirmation?
Yeah, I think it's a physical reminder of where you are. And it literally just forces you to do something physical. I couldn't tell you the exact science behind it, but I just do know that when you rub your hands, it makes you actually focus on the action a little bit more too. And once you add in something physical, it just feels like, okay, I have to focus on what I'm doing. And sometimes too, I think it may just be a little bit funny, right? And so that's what gets guys to laugh a little bit.
How about this? You're getting ready to walk into a meeting, and it's real serious.
Yeah.
People's jobs are on the line. The game, the season's going well or it's not going well. But it's a real serious meeting, right? Could be a big financial meeting. People's jobs and lives are always in flux, right? And you're walking in there, and it might be a good time to run through that affirmation again. But you can't be walking in the meeting with a whole bunch of executives saying, "It's a great day today," right? You can't be doing that. So, can you at least in that moment as you're walking in, just kind of like maybe once or twice, just kind of rub your hands as that physical cue. Hey, reminder. Hey, you know what? This next meeting today's gonna be a great day. So you're not saying it out loud, but you can just do the physical cue and as a reminder. Hey, you know what? Today's a great day. This is gonna be a great meeting. You know,
Absolutely.
I was just wondering
Absolutely.
that way you can still stay connected to that thought when it's inappropriate for you to be yelling that out.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I mean, you actually remind me of a time where, again, my master's degree is in sports psych. So we did a lot of stuff that, when I'm trying to prove myself as this, tough strength and conditioning intern, the guy who will do anything or whatever, and is a man's man. I remember people were telling me like, oh, us strength coaches, we eat bloody steaks and drink Bud Heavies, right? And so then I'm going to class and we're talking about our feelings immediately after. It was a little bit of a conflicting time. And one of our professors, she ended up telling us what her affirmation was, right? And so anytime she got nervous, her affirmation was, I'm strong, confident, beautiful woman, right? And at the time I was like, this is crazy. Why would you ever give me this information, right? But it turns out to her, that's exactly what she needed to know. And so anytime before I go into an interview, basically for jobs, that's pretty much the most of it. Doing podcasts, I don't get too nervous anymore just because I have to do it on a weekly basis. But ultimately when we go in for interviews, it may be a new job, like you said, maybe a very serious meeting. I always tell myself, I'm knowledgeable, I'm confident, I can do this. And I started repeating those affirmations to myself, and I just noticed my heart rate physically drop. Like that's a big thing that I notice. My physical response is my heart rate starts skyrocketing. I don't get sweaty. I don't get, clammy. I don't really, even breathe that heavy. I just notice my heart rate spikes. And when I gave myself that affirmation, I noticed that my heart rate drops. And so I'm certainly going to add in the hand piece too, because I think it'll be beneficial. But those affirmations, I always thought they were silly when I first started. And then I did it before, my interview for Texas Tech when I first went there. And it helped me immensely. And I felt way more confident going into the phone call.
Two podcasts ago, I did a piece where I broke down the power of pressure. And one thing for the long term, how to handle pressure in the long term is simply over prepare so much that you're ready.
Yep.
And you ask, and to stay motivated, you keep asking yourself why this is important. In the very short term, like the next play or the next day, or everything's happening in a moment. It's not like weeks or months down the road or a season down the road, but it's real close. You ask yourself, why does this not matter? Like if I can miss this lift, I can get this exam, I could bomb this exam, we could lose this game. Why does that not matter? So when you ask yourself that, then it kind of takes the pressure away. And I think one piece that we had this Marine sniper instructor on, and he's a big man of faith, and it was wild. He set up this boxcar container in the woods for like his office, and he had had Wi-Fi, had his gym in there and his office in there, and he's this legit sniper, like teaching people how to go out and kill people from forever away, and you're crawling along. And anyway, so he's real harsh for most of his life, don't be flat out either win or you're a pussy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he marries this lady who's a psychologist, and kind of gets his head in a better spot, and then added in faith. And so, I understand I'll be the man's man where I only eat I chew on the coffee beans, and I got a big dip in my mouth while I'm squatting 585 for 10, But if you do know and believe that, whether I believe this or not, but you, Connor and Lucas, that you are enough, like in God's eye, like you are enough. And if you know that you are enough, like you can quit your job tomorrow, like you are still enough.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know and believe that, and you believe you're part of God's plan, then a lot of those big pressures really kind of just float away. I'm not saying don't be sharp, don't be focused, and don't use that pressure to your advantage. But if you're in a bad spot and you can't handle it, and things are going real south, and you're making some bad decisions, know that you are enough, and it's going to take a lot of things away, and then regroup, reassess, get some help, and then move forward.
Yeah, it's amazing how relieving that thought can be, right? And I think especially for people who are high achievers or people who are very high anxious state people who overthink, like I was, with the Bridezilla. That's a good example, right? And just understanding, like, at the end of the day, even if this wedding goes wrong, I'm marrying the woman that I love.
Yeah.
Like, so who cares ultimately? And I think just understanding that, again, there's something bigger than us and there's always a plan for us. And so can we approach it from that standpoint? Like, just like you said, that for me is the weight off my shoulders. That's the paying my quarterly investment or whatever it may be, because ultimately I feel like I can stand taller, because it's just like, it doesn't truly matter because there's a plan set out for me and I'm following that plan. And I think it makes a huge, huge difference. And it's funny because, again, I think it's all the people who try to succeed the most and who want it so bad. It's like, like I always say, like, you're trying to pick up a girl, right? If you try too hard, it's not going to work, right? But ultimately, if you go in a little bit smoother, life is going to be a lot easier for you. So if you're just so tense and you're just ball of stress, it's not very easy for you, right? But as soon as you can take a deep breath and recognize there's something bigger than you, it makes a huge, huge difference.
I think when you go to ask someone out, you got to come with that loaded gumption, bro.
Yeah, you certainly need some gumption. That's true.
Right, you got to go with that. Explain to me high level, and then get as granular as you like, but bear in mind the audience and me, I'm not that bright. Self-determination theory.
Okay. I love talking about this. This is exactly what I built my entire coaching framework off of. But this is something that can be applied to pretty much any profession, in my opinion. So it's an original theory come up with Ryan and Deci, and this are University of Rochester researchers. I remember I always mention them because my sister's a professor at the University of Rochester. And I put together a PowerPoint on this. It was one of the biggest things that we talked about at the University of Tennessee. I sent her the PowerPoint and she said, "You didn't correctly cite them." That was the first thing that she mentioned. And then she said it was a good PowerPoint after that. So I always make sure to mention them. But
bunch of high achievers in that family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Trust me. And my parents cried when I told them I was going to be a strength coach. They thought I was throwing my life away. But we can dive into that later as well.
Some parent issues are coming to the surface from the psychology major, right?
Well, I really wanted this hour to talk about my mommy issues. That was the goal.
Right, do that.
But essentially, this theory looks at motivation and says it's not a quantity, it's a quality. And so there's a sliding scale of motivation, which a lot of people are familiar with. And so you have your A motivation all the way on the left-hand side, which means you don't want to get out of bed. You're not going to do that thing for the day. And then all the way on the right-hand side is your intrinsic motivation. And there's a bunch of steps in between. If I had to take a test on it right now, I would not do very great about where exactly each of those go. But, the next one would be avoidance motivation. I'm coming further to the right-hand side. So that would be, okay, I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to go to practice today because I know if I don't go to practice, my scholarship's going to get taken away, and I have to go. And then, there's external rewards after that. So, okay, I don't hate football, I don't hate basketball, whatever it is, but I do know for a fact that if I go to practice and I practice hard, there's a chance I could end up becoming a pro player. I could get some awards, and that's what motivates me. And then, there's the understanding that, okay, now on a little bit higher quality motivation, I don't really love lifting weights, but I love basketball to death. And so I know that if I lift weights, I'm going to be a better basketball player overall. So I'm going to go lift weights today, right? And then you have your full intrinsic motivation, which is I'm so excited because I love lifting weights. I'm going to go lift weights today, right? And so understanding the scale of motivation was huge for me. And again, a lot of people are familiar with this initial scale, but what this theory proposes is, again, that motivation is not a quantity, it's a quality. So you don't have a ton of motivation, you have high quality motivation, and the highest quality would be intrinsic. And so they break it down and they say that there's actually 3 factors that influence it the most. And so the first one that everybody always talks about is autonomy, which is basically, do I have a say in what I do? Do my values align with the organization's values as well too? The other two, which I always love to talk about a little bit more just because everybody knows about autonomy, right? If I have a say in something, I'm going to feel a little bit better about it. But then there's competency, which means, am I good at what I do? Do I feel like I'm good at what I do? And so somebody could be low competency. They could be, Tyrese Halliburton, right? But if he thinks he's a bad basketball player, ultimately he's not going to be successful. He's going to feel like he has low competency. And then there's relatedness, which is, am I part of the group? Am I somebody who I feel like I have influence in the group? Do I feel like my voice has a say? And so all these three things are directly interrelated, and they show that if somebody has a low amount of any of these, let's say the autonomy and competency are high, but the relatedness is low, they're going to have a lower level or lower quality of motivation as a whole. And then if somebody has low of all three, they're going to be sliding into A motivation or avoidance motivation pretty much 100% of the time. And so I love it because you can find three direct factors that directly motivate athletes. And it's one of those things where people always are looking for ways to motivate athletes, but now there's a direct psychological framework that shows exactly what you can do and actionable steps that you can do. And Lucas, I'm sure you're going to ask your wife about this afterwards. And I'm sure she'll be familiar
100%.
with it. Yep. But to dive a little bit deeper into each, right? So autonomy is, do I have a say in what I do? But there's a study that they did, and this was not related to autonomy at the time, but they essentially had two groups. It was novice putters, people who have never putted a golf ball in their life, never played mini putt, whatever it is, okay? And then the control group did not get to choose the color of their golf ball, and the experimental group got to choose the color of their golf ball. The experimental group by far and away did better than the control group, solely because they got to choose the color of their golf ball. So then after they did the study, they said it might be related to the autonomy piece. They might feel like they have a say in what they're doing. So then they took it a step further, and this one is what blew my mind when I first heard it when we were hearing about these studies is the first group does not, they both have to sit in a waiting room now, right? And before they go out to putt. The first group, the control group, does not get to pick what painting they look at on the wall before they go out and putt. The experimental group gets to choose what type of painting they want to look at. So it could have been nature, it could have been, Art Deco, whatever it is. It could be an Andy Warhol on the wall. Who cares, right? But they get to choose and look at what painting they want to see. And then they do not get to pick the color of their golf ball. The only choice they made was the painting that was on the wall. And then they go out and putt afterwards. And they found that the experimental group also did better at learning how to putt, simply because they got to choose what painting they looked at on the wall beforehand. And so that one blew my mind, right? And I thought it was incredibly exciting because it just goes to show when you're working with athletes, but when you're working with any other organization or anybody who you're trying to motivate, if you give them a choice, if you give them a say, even if it's the absolute smallest thing that they could possibly think of, they're going to be more motivated to actually do well in that task. And so a simple one that we use in the weight room is letting them pick the music for the day, right? If I have the choice for music, we're listening to Motley Crue, right? AC/DC. Those are the things that I like, right? If I put on AC/DC for my group of basketball players, they immediately go, what the hell is this? We don't want to listen to this, right? And so ultimately I could say, okay, I know you guys like listening to, Gunna or whatever it is. So I'm just going to put Gunna on, right? But every day I intentionally ask one person, okay, what do you specifically want to listen to? And it might be a guy who always listens to Gunna, all of a sudden he wants to listen to Young Boy. But ultimately you can see a higher level of motivation for that athlete and a higher quality motivation because they got to make just one simple choice. Another way that I do it a lot is selections of exercises at the end of lifts. So things that to me ultimately don't matter a ton, right? A simple thing could be a wide grip seated bicep curl versus a standing hammer curl, right? Obviously they work slightly different mechanics. You get a different result from each, but ultimately you're doing bicep curls. If I hate wide grip seated bicep curls and I'm forced to do those on a daily basis, I'm not going to put that much effort into it. But if I get a choice and all of a sudden I can do hammer curls, it seems like this really, really small thing that you're giving the athlete, but ultimately they're doing at a much higher quality of motivation and they're getting a lot more out of the exercise. And so one person took it super far, and this is very anecdotal, but I always like bringing up this example as well. This is Allie Kirshner, I believe her name was. She was the head strength coach at Stanford women's basketball at the time. Okay, they ended up. This is the COVID year, and California was one of the latest with their restrictions allowing people to come back. Right, which we don't have to dive into the COVID piece either. But they're one of the latest come back. Her team starts working out in September, and they're going to end up playing in October in scrimmages and then full games in November. And so what she did was basically in September and October taught them, okay, this is a goblet squat, this is a front squat, this is a hack squat, this is an RFE squat. Okay, so that she went through all the squats. Then she taught them all the presses as well. And then she knew with a limited amount of training time, she ended up giving her athletes the choice when they came in for later lifting sessions later in the year. You have to do one form of single leg squat, you have to do one form of double leg squat, you have to do one form of double arm press, whatever it may be. They have this whole lexicon of exercises that they could possibly do, and she allowed them to pick and choose what they wanted. And I'm not saying this because of this, right? But they went on and won the national championship that year, right? But you look at, okay, from a mental fatigue standpoint, the number one time the motivation is going to be as low as possible for athletes is going to be towards the end of the year when it comes to the weight room, right? They may be super motivated when it comes to the court, but when we're looking at playoffs, when we're looking at the Sun Belt tournament for our guys, right? They don't want to be in the weight room lifting. They want to be getting extra shots up. They want to be watching more film. They want to win, but it kind of goes, with blinders on to, okay, I need to focus on just basketball. And so she found a way at the end of the season when people are super low motivation and super low quality motivation to find a way to kind of inspire them. So that's the autonomy piece. A lot of people are really familiar with that. But the other two, I think you can identify a lot with athletes, and I have an example for each one. And so the competency one is one of our, strength and conditioning is so different from how people approach things. And everybody has a different methodology, and almost every methodology works if you're consistent enough, right? So I'm not saying that my way is better than the other, right? But I did have a lifter come in, and she was a women's basketball player, and, she was not happy with how her body looked. Ultimately, she, felt like her body was not where it needed to be. I thought she was in great shape, but herself and her view of it was not positive. And then we talked about where she transferred from, what she did lifting wise there. And she said she felt like it was all this bulking, lifting, and whatever. Right. We don't have to get into the exact science of it because we know it doesn't really matter. It's, your nutrition, how you approach it. But when I sat down with the athlete and when we actually talked through a plan for her, what I noticed was that she understood and felt better about what we were actually doing. And then towards the end of the year, she ended up losing about 10 pounds. And I actually have a sign right next to me, which I can text you guys a picture of. But at the end of it, she said, "Thank you, Connor, so much. You changed the course of my basketball career," simply because she lost 10 pounds and she felt like she looked better, and that made her a better basketball player as well. And so competency doesn't have to be a direct skill. It could be your own self-worth. It could be how you view yourself. But ultimately, this is somebody who felt so low about themselves in one area. She was a great leader otherwise. I think she had a lot of autonomy and a lot of choice. She was, like I said, a leader for the group, so her relatedness was very high, but her competency was low. And she said, "You helped me find my love for the game of basketball again," which is, again, showing people that you slide more towards the intrinsic side, right? Because intrinsic is, I love this and I want to do it because I love the game. And so ultimately, we were able to find a way to kind of pick apart. She doesn't feel good about herself at this point, so how can we make her feel better about herself? And so that was a big lesson for me too, was it's not always just about performance, it's about how people feel about themselves. And then the last one is relatedness. And so on another team, this was a team of really strong faith, but there was one player who, she was from Africa. She did not speak English super well. She was able to communicate with everybody, but, already her relatedness is low because she doesn't speak the same language as everybody. She's from a completely different culture, and so she doesn't really necessarily feel like she's part of the group. And then I guess I only bring up the faith for one specific reason. We get in a prayer circle before one of the games. And so in that prayer circle, everybody joins hands. And then she ultimately says, I'm a Muslim. I cannot participate in this prayer. It is, against my faith to be able to be a part of this. And so quite literally, we had one big circle, and then we had one athlete on the outside of it. And if that is not the lowest relatedness you can get, I don't know what is, right? Because it says we are all a group and you're not a part of the group, right? And it wasn't intentional from anybody whatsoever, but understanding the theories behind these things and understanding the context of it, you can really see how this person feels about themselves. And the relatedness is extremely low that she ends up transferring at the end of the year. Right. And so these results are directly related to, in my opinion, autonomy, competency, and relatedness. And so understanding that each of these things is just as important as each other, but then also saying I can identify these things and I can take actionable steps to actually change them right now to hopefully allow this player to be better. I mean, it blew my mind to understand it. And then once I got to actually practice it, I was able to identify these problem areas better and I was able to make more changes. So I love talking about it because it's one of those things where, I remember sitting in class and literally saying, "Don't good coaches already do this?" Right. And then of course the academics were like, no, you have to learn this. There's no way you could possibly do it. I'm like, all right, get out of here. Right. Good coaches do these things already, but now there's an exact set framework for it where we can help people be better coaches by identifying these problems and identifying the level and quality of motivation of these athletes. And how can we get them further from a motivation to intrinsic motivation? And you're not going to get everybody to intrinsic motivation. Everybody's not going to be the most excited they've ever been about lifting weights, right? But ultimately, can we improve their quality and motivation so that they can be more, stuck to their sport, stuck to the process of getting better, and can you see better results?
All in one breath, right?
Sometimes I can get going, so.
Right? I won't know athlete's name or the coach's name, but I know it was Dean Smith, the legendary coach at North Carolina basketball. And he had a player from a small country in a smaller town out of Africa. And um, the culture was completely different than the United States,
Hmm.
right? And so one of the coaches was getting after him and was pissed because the athlete wouldn't look him in the eye. He said, "Hey man, would you look at me? Would you look like, hey, look at me? What is your problem, kid? Look me in the face. Look me in the eye while I'm talking to you." And finally, because um, the kid was taught and trained that, hey, you be, respect your elders and be a bit submissive. And he goes, hey, it's a lack of respect for me to look you in the eye where I come from. I don't want to treat you with disrespect. And people are like, holy shit, right? And then 2 days later, that kid is in his dorm room and he gets a call from his mother. And the mother says, hey, kid, do you know this so and so's name? And she rattled off one of the assistant coaches' names. And he goes, yeah, that's one of our coaches here, Mom. I haven't seen him for a couple of days. Well, he's in my living room and he wants to sit down for as long as it takes to ask me all the different aspects of our culture so he can bring that back so they can include that kid so he's not feeling ostracized because that kid's an asset, right? He's a talent on the team. He's one of the guys out there in the court they're trying to win with, and they want to make sure that kid is part of that family. And Dean Smith, and they say, don't all coaches know this? Well, some do and some don't, right? And there's some that are in the Hall of Fame, there's some are not. And Dean's, outstanding, obviously. He knew to send this guy, this assistant coach, immediately. Hey, we have an issue, and we are going to fix it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It's just crazy. I mean, what you can do in understanding and identifying, does this person feel like they're a part of the group? And if they don't, what can we do to actually bring them back?
There are also, there's short term and long term. Like long term, you're playing basketball because ultimately you like basketball and you're probably good at it and you're good at beating people. So there's some long term intrinsic stuff. And the short term, hey, we're trying to win. A lot of times you're playing for your boys or you're playing for the girls on your team, the guys in the locker room. There's that piece that you're playing for. And then there's the crowd and all the fun. And then there's the money and the noise, right? But some days you don't feel like shit and it's hard to even get anywhere close intrinsically. And one of the hacks I tell people, and I do it myself, is that, hey, as much as I can, I want to remind myself of all my whys. But even some days it's like, I don't care, right?
Hmm.
So then all right, like I'm doing a swim in New York. I'll be on the way. Sometimes it's a half hour drive, and there's no part of me that wants to swim for an hour and a half straight. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to uh, rewire my head here for this drive. And I'm put on all my favorite let's go drop some ass and pick up big weight songs, right? So I got this playlist. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hype myself up, extrinsically, because every once in a while I need to do something fake, right? Or I'll put on a Tony Robbins or a Jocko or a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant motivational speech, and I'll listen to that. I can't, but if I'm listening to Rocky every day on the way to the gym, after a while it kind of gets tuned out, right? But
Hmm.
every once in a while, if I don't have it internally, I got to fabricate something external, and I call that brainwashing, where I'm gonna wash my brain a little bit here and try to just fake it because I'm still gonna go and do this task. I want to make sure I'm doing it okay. So did they talk about that at all? How it's yeah, intrinsic is the most powerful, but sometimes got to go a different route.
Yeah, certainly. And I think I agree 100%, right? Because again, there's days where I know for a fact I don't want to lift, right? And one of the things I always go back to is kind of like those small YouTube edits, of like power lifters back in the day. Like I
Right?
love pumping iron. I love watching those, movies and kind of those quick clips. And I love watching, videos of Arnold, basically doing his thing, right? Those things get me a little bit more pumped up. And so there's certainly days that those exist. I think you just have to look at the sum average of those days. And so do I have to do this stuff, like you say, every single day? And if I have to do it then I really probably have a problem with my motivation. But
Right.
if it's, if it's a Tuesday and I'm just feeling a little bit tired, there might be some external factors. Maybe I went to sleep late. Maybe I had a couple too many Finleys the night before, right? And I got to get excited for it. That's okay. But, if I'm feeling like this on every day that ends in Y, there's a problem. And that's what needs to be addressed.
I can tell you every day that I had to go to engineering classes for the first 3 semesters at Purdue, my motivation was low, and it wasn't because I wasn't good at math. I was good at math.
Yep.
I could not stand this shit. I was like, you know what? Well, I didn't turn my homework into that day, or I got a bad grade in that quiz. Oh, well, there's some negative repercussions, but they weren't negative enough for me to change. And after 3 semesters, when they invited me not to return to the engineering school, I was thrilled. I'm like,
Hmm.
sweet, sweet. I'm going into the business school. It's what I want to do anyways. And so I quickly moved over there because I should have stopped lying to myself. Hey, this is really what I wanted to do. So you're right. If you're doing something all the time, like your habits or your actions are going to be screaming pretty loudly,
Hmm.
right?
It's even a small example of this would be one of our GAs right now just applied for a job. And she got offered the job, right? And I asked her about it. I said, "Are you excited about it?" And she's like, "Well, I'm excited. It is part time though. We don't have benefits and everything." And I said, "Okay." So, and she's still weighing the decision, right? And I said, "Okay, when you got called and you basically got offered the job, you weren't elated, right? And you weren't super excited about it." And she's like, "No, not really." I said, "So then don't take the job." Because if you're already at such a low level of motivation and you're trying to convince yourself that you need to go higher, you're going to be in a really, really messed up spot. On 1 out of 10 times, it may end up where it was the best decision you ever made, and it ended up being more and more than anything you ever could have thought it was. But then 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something that you're not very excited about. It's going to be something that you're not motivated to do. So if you're already on the point where you're saying, okay, I need to take this job, and this would be the avoidance motivation. I need to take this job just because I need to take a job and I need to get money because my GA's run out. Ultimately, you're not going to be in a good, successful spot. And you're just going to have to convince yourself, and you're going to have to do these mental gymnastics every day. And it's not going to be a check-in. You know for a fact that you're going to have negative thoughts to start the day. So now I'm not checking in, I'm convincing myself. And that's where you just become miserable.
Gotcha, gotcha. Let me ask you this. I don't know because I don't I didn't do the studies, and so some of my philosophies are from learning and reading, and some are just from observation or my own trial and error. And one of the things, like, since we run a CrossFit gym, we have to call it functional fitness, but it's we're doing CrossFit. Anytime you log your results, whether it's sports performance, powerlifting, CrossFit, strongman, whatever, you log your results, and if you improve in any way, shape, or form, a WOD, an accessory, a main lift, you on your tab where you check in that day, there's a little gold star, right? And so yeah, there's this little gold star, and I'm like, you know what, motherfucker, I love gold stars for me. And so when I was mostly in the lifting all the time, what I tell people is that, hey, if you always PR in your accessories, your main lifts will go up. So I'm like every day I'm like, so whether we're doing single arm rows or lat pull down, whatever, I'm trying to PR, trying to PR, trying to PR. Fast forward, I'm not lifting that much anymore, and I still lift and train, but not like as heavy. And so I'm like, well, I witness these other folks always tracking, well, looking for a gold star, even the smallest way. And sometimes it's even fabricating this bullshit. People kind of lie to themselves, yeah, I PR, but you really didn't. But I witnessed them doing it, and I witnessed myself doing it. So what I would do is I had this journal for my swim log for this event in August, and so there was 2 standards I set on the first day. One is you're gonna swim at least 3 days a week, ideally 4, and the maximum would be 5. So that's my standard, right? You're gonna hit this number. And then the other standard is every week I must increase volume in some way, shape, or form, some way, shape, or form, whether it's individually or with certain stroke or at one time or in one day or for volume for the week. So every week I must, because I was starting at the bottom, like all I could do was swim up to a bar and drink, right? That's where I started, but now I'm higher. But each day, so in my journal, I'm tracking all my days I swam and all the days I had a win, where it's further or a better time or better breathing or whatever. And so what I tell people is if you can either set your system up so you're getting these wins all the time, you can help fabricate some more motivation. And I didn't see if that aligned at all with your 3 things or on your spectrum, but do you have thoughts on that approach or research or any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, who doesn't love gold stars, right?
Right.
I mean, if somebody tells me I've been a good boy, I get excited, right? So ultimately, like, we look at compliments from our head coach, right? And so that's one of the things that strength and conditioning coaches always hang their hat on is, does my head coach like me, or is my head coach excited about what we're doing, right? And my head coach, I love working for my head coach here. He's not a complimentary guy a lot of the time, right? And so I kind of have to go based off of one thing he said 3 months ago, that he loves what I'm doing, and I did a great job, right? But ultimately, everybody loves a little bit of external motivation. Everybody loves a little bit of, okay, you've done a great job, and I'm proud of what you did today, right? But at the same time, if you are only hanging your hat on those things, that's where it's a problem.